Welcome to the Four Wards Podcast. Hey, what's up? It's Eric Bra, voice of Draven, Jerks, and Vel'Koz. And you're listening to the Four Wards Podcast, here to help you move forward in League.
All right, guys, what is up? This is the Four Wards Podcast here. My name is Haberdashing, and I am joined by three other individuals here tonight. I'm going to go down the table. Shut up. I'm going to see how everyone's doing here. Let's start with Doom. How you doing tonight?
Hey, doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How's League been going?
Going good. Been playing some Maokai lately, and I did well with him last season, so I thought I'd pull him out, and I actually really like him with Cinder Hulk, so Maokai.
Okay. You've been working on your goals, right? So
like I said, I'm still trying to figure out like the jungle, and there's just been so many changes to the meta, but I think I'm about there. I was gonna actually hit some rank tonight.
Okay, so the man himself, Asderition, how is Ariel doing today?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is the thing now, I guess. I'm doing all right. That intro is so funny. But let's see. I've actually been playing a lot of WoW, so I gotta admit I've been kind of breaking my little obsession with League. But
Excuse me?
Lux got a bug fix that ended up being a massive buff, so I'm super freaking excited because I did some math and she just got like, I think her damage went up about 30 to 40 at level 6, and then at level 11 it jumped up like 70 to 90. Okay. So I mean, it may not be like, it's not a whole lot of number, like that doesn't seem like a whole lot to you guys, but I can't tell you how often I would see someone walk away with like 10 health and I'd be like, you shitbag. Like, you should be dead. You should be dead.
We can't even go through 5 minutes of a podcast without Asderition mentioning Lux.
Nope.
It's not my fault.
It's understandable. It's understandable this week. I'll give him that.
We still got chicken.
But yeah, he's going to find a way to work it into everything in any episode. So that leaves you, Frost. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm also riding that buff train. One, because I also play Lux and Choo-Choo. But two, we got lower cost on the Chalice, and then my boy Ziggs with the cheaper mana cost on the Bouncing Bomb. Fun times, man. It's a good time to be alive. It's a good time to be in a mid lane mage main, I guess.
Sounds like it, yeah.
I'm happy, man. I know the goals topic. This is where we do our little goals thing, and I'm sad to admit that I still haven't really started grinding ranked yet. But like the lasers that were shot into my eye last week, the whole eye situation's getting better. I'm starting to play more of my main champions, especially now that Ziggs got his bombs.
There you go.
And then hopefully, as I said, if by the time we're releasing shows in April, if you haven't seen me like grinding ranked games, then just call me out on it.
Yeah, we'll all be doing that. Don't worry.
In fact, I wanted to say something today. Like, why the shit haven't you started?
Right.
Hey, my goal isn't nearly as hard as Diamond 3.
That's
okay?
true. Yeah, that's true.
So, humble brag from Asderition. Okay.
Well, I didn't even say it. He said it.
Yeah, but you're kind of like, yeah, it's true.
You can't brag about what your goal is. You have to brag about
I have to
get
it.
the goal.
When I get there, I can start bragging. I can't brag.
Okay.
I'm not even there yet. Like, not even close.
Sound a little less excited about it.
I actually think, like, you know, we always talk about analyzing your own play, and one thing I noticed from my recent games is I like haven't been looking at the mini map as much as I needed to. I got ganked like 3 times, and I had it warded, and I was like, what am I doing? So I'm adding that onto my list of things I'm gonna start focusing on a bit more. But yeah, definitely hopping into rank soon. Excited. Not playing WoW.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
WoW's done, man. Why
would anyone do that?
Also, shout out to the WoW side of the Trinity Force Network.
Exactly. It's
We're
not like we're
Totally forgot.
It's not like we're not
Whoops.
strictly League of Legends anything. Oh, God
Yeah.
forbid you play WoW.
Filthy casual. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
Anyways, we've been getting a lot of tweets and emails about your goals, enough that we can't even mention all of them on tonight's show because there are just too many. But we are still running that contest for 2 $10 RP cards until April 1st. So send us your goals, either email forwards.trinityforcepodcast.com. No, that's not right.
Email us at
4wards at Trinity Force Podcast.
Yeah, forwards
right.
at, not dot. Sorry, I was thinking of our website. And
Yeah.
also you can find us on Twitter at 4 with the number 4 Wards Podcast. All right there too. Is that the right way? I can't tell. I'm thinking
you're
I don't
up. You're up and
I'm
guess
up.
to your right. Up to your right.
that way. Am I
Up
good now?
To the right. Up to the right.
Oh fuck, screw it.
For those who are listening to the audio, you're gonna be.
It's
very
right in the
confused.
freaking middle of the overlay. And it'll be
Yay.
it'll be in the show description as well for you guys listening, so you can get in on that as well. But I just want to say thanks to everyone who wrote in so far. We really appreciate the support we've had for the first 3 episodes, and we hope to keep it going.
Absolutely.
Fact.
Yeah. So let's dive right into it here in a minute after we talk about some of the announcements we got. Caught myself right there. So, guys,
Nice.
we have Battle Arena SmackDown Edition that's going to be going live this Saturday here, the 28th, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be sort of like our regular Battle Arena, except it's going to be Bronze, Silver versus Platinum. Each of them is going to have an opportunity to be against a Platinum person and also another person watching them. So it's like Battle Arena hopped up on steroids,
Yeah.
just like wrestling.
And even if you're not participating, go ahead, drop in and watch because they got a lot of information that they're going to be unloading on you guys.
I can't wait to see what I can learn off because, I mean, and also it's just going to be kind of hilarious.
It's
seeing
going to be
people
so
just
much
get
fun.
So
stomped.
funny.
So other stuff going on. We are going to be officially starting our coaching. And I say officially as kind of official as it is right now. So if you need help, you want us to come spectate your games, play games with you, whatever, you can send us an email to our email address. But as long as you have something you're specifically wanting to work on, we're going to prioritize those people first. So if you write in and say, hey, I'm Bronze 5, I want to improve, give us something more to go on. And if you can't figure it out, we'll try to help you out. But, you should at least have something you can come in here to work on.
We're all about those goals, right? You got to have goals.
All
So
about those
if
goals.
you're coming in for some coaching, have some goals in mind on what you want to work on so that we need a place to start too. We can't just look at you and be like, oh, yeah, I can tell that you're silver too, and you want to. I don't know what your problem is, so you need to come to us and let us know what you want to work on, so that we can make sure we're giving you the best possible info.
And with goals, not just like, hey, I want to be silver or gold, but, also like smaller goals like, hey, I want to master this champ. I want to get better at last hitting. I want to get better at, this. So, give us something kind of specific because we really want to build from there.
Okay. Yeah. And finally, last announcement here. Guys, remember, we are on Reddit here, reddit.com/r/Trinity Force Network.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And right now, Silent is going to be going to the LCS now. We got a press pass. We're going to start doing interviews and stuff for the Trinity Force podcast. Big day. So if you have things you want to ask the pros, go to Reddit. There's a thread right there right now for Silent, asking who to interview, what you want them to interview. So good way to get your questions answered by the pros in the final week of LCS before we get into the playoffs. Oh, God, I love it.
So much fun. It's such a good season. Best
I
part
love
of the
it.
season is when everything starts to get fun with the spring split.
Yeah. So
speaking of which, I was just quick plug for the network. I I was running this morning and doing my workout, and I was listening to LCS Rundown. They were really explaining the playoff scene. So they're doing an awesome job. So definitely give them a listen if you want to keep up on the pro scene and get a little more insight on that.
Yeah. Remember, as big as the Four Awards podcast is already, there are other people in the T-Force network.
Yeah.
It's not like we're the newest ones that you've heard of. Okay. So let's talk about what we got going on this week. Champ choice. This week we're going to be talking about Amumu, and I'm going to let Doom take this one.
Yeah, so with our our champ segment, we were going for 3 weeks, but then we kind of realized that we released the podcast so late in the week that it's kind of silly for us to do that. So we're going to focus on champs that are good to pick up, good to learn, and good to play. So I'm throwing in Amumu for the jungle. I think he's a pretty staple jungler. Everyone should kind of learn. He has a really high win rate, especially in low elos, but overall his win rate's really high. He has a game-changing team fight ultimate. It basically, you get in the middle of the team and you press R, and everyone is stunned. It's beautiful.
It's great.
Snared. They're snared. They're not stunned. They're snared.
Okay, fair enough.
I want people to make sure, because if you're playing against a Mumu and you get ulted, that doesn't mean just keep clicking your left click to try and move, because you're not going to go anywhere, and that also forces your champion to not do anything. Use some spells, throw out some auto attacks. You're not completely CC'd.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of AoE damage. All of his spells, except for his bandage toss, do AoE damage. So he's going to damage everyone just by being in the middle. So he's fun because you just basically get in the middle of their team and you just stay close to whoever you want to kill, and they just keep dying. And especially with the new Cinder Hulk item, it works really well on him. It just hurts to stand close to Amumu. So he's super fun. As he gets towards mid-game, he starts having a really good clear, so he can just nuke through minion camps. And his bandage toss is really cool because it allows him to get between and get into camps over walls and things real easily. Also, his bandage toss is a really interesting skill shot. It helps with learning slower skill shots, kind of like a Morgana Dark Binding and stuff. But it also helps him reposition properly for a fight. So I really love learning that. And if you learn that, it helps you with a lot of other champ skill shots.
You can also flash aggressively when bandage toss is on cooldown.
Exactly. Yeah, bandage toss is a really dynamic spell. It's not something you have to land on a champion for an initiation. I mean, half the time, if you're coming into a gank, you're already in range to use your ultimate, so it's fine to use that first and then use your bandage toss to keep the CC train rolling. Or even if you're getting ready for a team fight, to bandage toss to a minion so you're in range to use your ultimate.
Amumu is just one of these champions that I kind of like what DeClaw does. I almost never want to surrender when I have an Amumu on my team, because when that guy's around, there's always that chance you're just going to have that perfect team fight where 4 or 5 people on the enemy team are all locked down in one big ball, and you just turn the entire game around. And he is a game changer in team fights.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he gets in the middle of a team. He's doing that percent health damage with his W. He hits his E as he hits his R and just chunks everyone around him, and then just sticks right on top of people with his Q and is just zones everyone out of the fight. And he gets super tanky. Just because he's little, don't overlook that he becomes just this monster tank that you just don't want to be anywhere near. So I love him, and honestly, if you're getting started in the jungle, and once again, like I said, I'll keep harping on get your ass in the jungle. I don't care where you are in learning League. Get your ass in the jungle, and if you want a good champ to do it with, Amumu is a great safe pick and a great place to start.
So do you have any tips for skill order, builds, any of that?
I recommend one in the jungle. You want to rush the Cinder Hulk item. It works really well with him. As for the enchant, you can either go with the Rangers to clear faster, or I personally prefer Stalker's Blade so that you can stick to people and stay on top of them to keep applying your AoE damage.
Okay.
Max is Tantrum, and that's going to help him just burst through camps and provide that little extra burst damage around him every time you hit it. And the beautiful thing about it is that every time you get attacked, it reduces the cooldown of it. So he's actually a champ that it benefits you to be getting wailed on with auto attacks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you want to get in the middle of it and that fight, and you want them to focus you, because then you can just keep spamming E and doing so much damage. So definitely max your E. Obviously hit your R whenever, throw your alt points in your alt whenever you can. Then from there, it kind of is up to you. I like to do the bandage toss just so it's up more often, and I can keep staying on top of people. But if you are not having much problem getting in and staying in a fight, you can definitely do his W, which will do the % health damage around you. Or if they have a really tanky team, do the W so that you're doing more of that % health damage.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
2 notes that I thought of while listening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mumu's Q is similar to Thresh's Q in the sense that the further you are away from the person when you throw it, the longer the CC is because you travel. So if I remember correctly, the further you land that bandage toss, the longer they're going to be CC'd for, which
that is
could be
correct,
a point
because
to take.
The instant it hits them, they get rooted, and then it pulls you to them, and during that duration that you're being pulled to them, they stay rooted.
Yeah. So that's a note. And then also another thing about the E, which you said is the spell to max. Yes, it is. Not just because of the AoE damage that it does whenever you click it, but also it reduces damage taken on auto attacks, which is huge for the jungle. Like, people are always like, oh, screw Raptors, they're too strong. As a Mumu, you're like, woo, Raptors!
Yeah. Well, and especially too because you've got 4 of them wailing on you, and like I said, every time you take an attack, it reduces the cooldown, so you can just keep spamming it, and suddenly they're just all dead.
Yeah.
It's what I love to do is, hey, you try to gank mid lane, or you just walk in mid lane and scare them off. Then you bandage toss over the wall into the raptor pit, and E dead. All right.
Okay, so we can keep moving.
We could go on, and I know Haber's about to transition. So the one last thing I'll say about Amumu is that he's got a pretty cool music video out there, and you should all check it out.
Yeah, it's super emo. Oh, God. So moving on, Trinket Tip for this week.
Yeah.
Mike, Asderition, you want to take us through it?
Yeah, so the Trinket Tip for this week is we're talking about the A key. So the A key, for those of you that don't know, is your attack key. Hey!
Oh my God.
But your A key allows you to choose what you attack with a little bit more precision. So normally you can use your right click to attack. And while that is the easiest way, it's not the most effective way. And the reason being is that your pressing A immediately stops you from doing whatever else you were doing, and it can allow you to do multiple things at once rather quickly. So it allows you to attack something with a little bit more precision because you can actually click on it a little easier, and it allows you to be a little bit faster. It's a concept called orb blocking. Eventually, this will lead you to it when you become, a really good marksman. What the pros do, you'll notice how they move and attack at the same time. How they're doing it is through proper use of the A key. So the A key is the thing that you want to get in the habit of using more often than just your normal right click, because your right click you want to be using for movement. And just generally, it's a lot easier. One, for your brain, when you differentiate 2 things separately, rather than your right click on your mouse being both your attack and your move. If you specify as one to be, okay, this is my movement, and then I use A left click as attacking, you become a little bit quicker with your movements. So you're actually able to you move a little bit faster. And in the long run, it'll actually increase your damage, because how quickly you're able to do able to do damage will also allow you to do more damage faster. So what this means is just an overall increase in damage.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, you got to remember with the attack move, which is the A key, anything within your auto attack range, you will start attacking. That's the whole idea behind it. And while it's really good, you have to remember when you start getting in a scuffle in the bot lane or anywhere else, if there are minions that are closer to you, you will prioritize the minions unless you specify that you're clicking right on the champion.
I think
they may have changed that.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that they changed that. Which is another reason why I thought it would be prudent to bring it up, is when you use A now, anything, it prioritizes champions regardless if
within a certain area.
Within a certain area.
Yeah.
So if there's one coming at you and you hit A, attack somewhere random, which again, if you don't know what this means, if you press A, click somewhere, that means that your champion is going to move to that spot and then attack anything in that spot
at the edge of the range.
Yes.
If you're not in the
Picture that you're playing an AD carry in a team fight and you want to start to engage with auto attacks. Maybe the fight's just broken out. The last thing you want to do is accidentally miss your right click and just start moving towards the enemy.
Yeah.
But if you get a feel for the A click, you'll actually auto attack at max range, and it'll prevent you from, just like blindly running into the enemy, assassin.
Which is really important to work on positioning as, overall.
It also really helps with last hitting, and something that we're actually talking about for our main segment. For those champions, marksmen's, it's fairly easy for you to get used to using the A click. But for top laners, mid laners as well, you'll notice that sometimes you just need a little bit more precision with when you're selecting something to auto attack, or maybe you're in just a bit too, like you need to move a little bit too, like a little quicker, or you can't move the mouse that fast, and you just need to be very fast with your movement. The A click allows you to be a lot quicker with your auto attacks. So it's a good habit to get used to. It's also the only way you can auto attack cancel. You cannot auto attack cancel just using your mouse unless, well, you can move, I guess, but it's a lot easier for you to auto attack cancel using your A.
I think one other point I want to bring up this before we move on to our main discussion here. If you're going into a bush that's not warded and you're not sure, click on the bush with auto attack move, especially like someone's trying to juke away from you. They're running away, trying to go in between the bushes, being real cheeky. Just press A. A click one of the bushes.
It's like a homing missile.
Yeah. It stops them from being able to keep juking you like that. So, because it'll automatically make you attack them, right? So, like if you press A into a bush, regardless of whether or not they do those crazy jukes, you're still going to auto attack them. The second you see them, you'll throw out your auto attack.
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually didn't even know that. That's a really good deal.
It's really helpful.
It's really useful for when people are trying to
I was
juke.
thinking that would really be good for like Rengar if someone tries to bush juke you with when like I'm Rengar, and it'll make sure I just hop right on their ass the instant I see them. So I like that.
All right. So we're going to move on to our main segment of the show. If you remember last week, we talked a little bit about the early game, and I think we all came to the conclusion that creep score was the underlying and most important factor that we need to work on. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, CSing is very important, so we want to talk about, how exactly do you CS? And, how do you become better at it? We have a list of topics that we want to cover here. So I'm going to free discussion here. Whoever wants to head it off, go ahead.
First off, CS stands for creep score, for those of you that don't know. So when you're trying to find out what CS is, first off, to find CS, you press and hold the tab button, which brings up the scoreboard. And then there's a number that says, under a creep looking guy with a purple head. That's how many creeps you have. Yeah, that's your creep score.
In your upper.
Yeah, it's also.
If you hear about last hits, farming, CS, creep score, they're all referring to the same thing.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, that's what we're talking about when we say CSing, if you don't know.
Okay. And it's important to CS because that is your main source of gold, no matter like how many times like people want to tell you the kills are really important. It only takes roughly about 20 CS to equal a kill.
Yeah.
So if you have an Akali that's 5-0, but someone who's, about 100 CS up on them, they're relatively equal in gold.
Yeah. And it's funny. In most games, a majority of your income will be through creeps, not kills.
Mm-hmm.
Except in those like rare 21 and 2 games where you're just like absolutely stomping people. But
Yeah.
more often than not, your primary source of gold, your largest income of gold will be through creeps.
Okay, so we want to kind of make this discussion as ubiquitous as possible for the top lane, the middle lane, and the bottom lane. Jungle, I mean, this is kind of not your wheelhouse, but everyone has a secondary role, so
Yeah.
it's important that everyone learns how to do this. So let's talk a little bit about basic manipulation. What does that mean? What are we trying to do here?
Basically, like it's manipulating the creep waves. Whether that be pushing or pulling or freezing the lane, making sure that it's in a spot that you want it to be, depending on what's going on and what you've got going on. If say your enemy is out of the lane and you want to go back, or say you want to just go back, you want to shove the lane. So you
How about
just
we focus on specifically how you do each of the three?
Well,
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I think a whole nother segment could be about when to push, when to freeze, when to do all this. But if those terms sound completely alien to you, what it means is it's how much damage you're trying to apply to the minions. If somebody says freeze the minion wave, what they want you to do is try and keep the minions kind of standing where they're at. Not that you don't want the lane shoving in any direction, either towards you or away from you, is really what you want to avoid. And in order to do that, you want to not be doing damage to the minions until the very last hit possible. This will prevent the minions from just hard shoving towards the enemy team. If you do want to shove the lane, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to do a ton of damage to the minions, use your spells, use your wave clear, use whatever you have to do, and get it closer to the and that'll shove the minions forward.
Yeah, and also for shoving, real quick, auto attacking the champion so that minions aggro to you and start attacking you rather than your champions is a good way to get it to start shoving too, because that means your minions are no longer taking damage. You're going to take a little bit of damage, but you get to get free damage on the minions for a second, and instead of them attacking your minions, you get free damage on their minions. So
and the key thing is, whether you're pushing or you're freezing, you still want to get that last hit. No, there should never be a time where you're like, well, I'm shoving it, so it's not as important. Always, always, always focus on getting the last hit on the minion, because that's what's going to get you gold. If you're spamming wave clear abilities to push the lane, that could be useful. But if you're not getting that last hit, you're missing out on a ton of gold. You're missing out on items, and it's really going to hold you back.
Definitely.
Yeah. So just really quick, touching on that, times when it is useful to shove the lane. Like, say, like Doom said, you're going back, but there are plenty of other times as well. When you have an advantage in lane and the jungler isn't around. So when you're warding it out, or you see the jungler somewhere else, and you can force the other champion under their tower, they're going to have a harder time getting their own CS, their own last hits. It allows you to exert more pressure in the lane.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like last hitting under turrets, say the alternative happens to you and you are pushed, this is actually quite the opportunity for you, because oftentimes people think that fighting under their turret is actually pretty bad, but especially as like a marksman or a mage, well, most mages, some mages have too low base damage, but that's beside the point. Point is that when you get minions forced under you, there's a very strict formula to which you can use to get every single minion, or at least most minions. And it actually makes it significantly easier for you to land it, because the tower is helping you. So, quick rundown: for any given minion, for pretty much any point in time in the game, there are some times getting close to like the mid game, late game, where this will not apply. It's a little bit trickier, but the basic formula is when a turret is attacking your enemy minions, if it attacks a melee minion, it has to attack twice, and then one auto attack from a champion will kill it. while the opposite for a caster minion, 2 attacks from a champion and 1 auto from a turret will kill it. So for simpler terms, what you do is you auto attack a caster, let the turret hit it, and then auto attack it to finish it off. For melee minions, you let auto attack the melee minion twice, and then you auto attack it once to finish it off. This doesn't necessarily apply later on because you can tend to kill minions either with 2 shots, or sometimes if you're not a AD champion, your base AD doesn't scale fast enough with minions to the point where it actually takes 2 autos to kill both minions, and an additional auto to kill a melee minion, and sometimes it sucks and you got to deal with it. But
yeah, it's something you gotta gauge yourself. Say like you're an AD carry and you feel you're ahead basically in items. You no longer have to hit those caster minions once before it hits the tower. Conversely, you have to really pay attention if you're kind of behind on your AD scaling items to make sure that maybe you need to hit those. Sorry, you hit the melee minions once before they go under tower, because it's something that comes with time, but the basic formula is there.
Yeah, the basic formula will always, almost, unless you have an underwhelming amount of AD, will always probably work. And if you think that you can kill a caster minion with 1 auto attack, then you just vary up your formula and you just don't auto attack them when they come in initially. That's it. It's really it's not that difficult of a change. Melee minions are always going to be 2 turret auto attacks and then yourself, and you're done.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit. We mentioned it earlier about creep harass. How does that play in, especially in the early game?
It makes a really, really big difference. I will end up having to talk about this in an entirely different segment about trading and managing minions, because minions are a huge part of the early game. You'd be surprised. So somebody brought up this rule earlier. Every time you auto attack an enemy champion, the enemy minions are going to start to focus your champion if they're within range. And at early levels, the damage that the minions are going to put out is nothing to scoff at. It honestly is honestly scarier than the damage some of the other champions.
Yeah.
So you really have to be very careful when you're playing aggressive. There's a beauty and an art to trading while minimizing the amount of damage that both your opponent is going to return to you and also the damage that the minions are going to do to you. So if you don't want this to happen where all of the minions to start just going crazy on you, you have to watch your positioning when you're farming.
Very much so. Yeah. And this is especially, you're going to notice this especially as mid laners are going to notice this, I think, probably the most, and top laners, although top laners are generally a little bit tankier. ADCs and supports, you're probably not going to notice this happen a lot more to you, just because ADCs have generally a decent range, and when you auto attack something, it's probably going to be in an opportunity where you're not going to have to deal with a lot of creeps. You may still have to deal with this whole having to deal with creep damage, but this is primarily for mid laners and top laners. I feel like
the key word is auto attack as well. If you hit somebody with a spell, just a spell, the minions won't turn aggro onto you.
Spells that don't count
that
as
don't
auto
apply
attacks.
on him.
Yeah.
So
there's a few that kind of fall into that category: Gangplank's Q.
I think we're starting to go into some of the very advanced stuff here.
Okay.
Let's say I'm listening and I realize, my CS numbers aren't very good. What can I work on to get my CS numbers higher? And what should I? Yeah.
I can talk. There's actually a fairly popular guide from a challenger player about how to really practice CSing. And it's a very simple formula. You start at the very bottom and work your way up by going into custom games. And what you do is you pick a champion, a specific champion that you want to work on, because I want to stress this, that every champion is different in how they are able to last hit, able to CS, especially with mages.
Auto attack animations are very different among different champions.
Yeah, but the whole basic thing is you go in, you start, you don't do any runes, you don't do any masteries, it's just your base champion. You don't buy any items, and you just go to the lane, and you practice either auto-attacking the minions as much as you can, or as little as you can. And you want to try to do it. You can do it for 5 minutes. That's all it takes, 5 minutes. And by the 5-minute mark, the highest CS you can get is 38.
Mm-hmm.
And once by the time, as soon as you start getting like 34 to 38 consistently, then you can move to the next step, which is okay. We're gonna do runes and masteries now. No items still, and you go through that, and then you add in items, and then you add in a bot champion to practice trading off harass versus last hitting, and then you can start going into regular games, and it takes 5 minutes, to go through that once.
I think at the very least you should load up a custom game every now and then before you start playing a bunch of games, and just practice with your normal setup and just focus on last hitting with auto attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you play a lot of AP champions that don't have high auto attack damage, you could be missing out on a lot of farm, and this little practice can do wonders for you if you're relatively new to the game, or even if you're pretty experienced at the game.
Yeah. Go ahead, Doom. Say your.
My one thing is that I know that a lot of this doesn't usually apply to jungling, but one thing I will say when it comes to jungling is that learning how your auto attack damage is and learning how many auto attacks plus your abilities it will take to kill jungle monsters is very crucial. Especially in the early parts of the jungle, because you want to take as little damage as you can from the jungle camps while you're trying to clear them, and also you want to make sure that you get them. You want to know how long and how many attacks it's going to take you to get them to that number to where you can smite them and they're going to die. The big one's going to die. So last hitting does play into jungling in that aspect, into knowing, how many attacks it's going to take you to kill, how much your combo is going to chunk down a camp so that you can hit that smite and get the last hit on it, things like that. So, definitely if you're, I kind of joke that, you don't got to worry about that crap if you're a jungle. You do need to worry about it, and overall you should try to learn more than one role. But overall, it is still very important to know how much damage your auto attacks are doing and how many attacks it takes to finish off those jungle monsters with that. And also using the A trick so that you're not sitting there through your whole auto attack animation and you can kind of kite out some of the damage. That is all very important. So
whether you're in the jungle or whether you're in a lane, it really comes down to discipline. It's really easy in League of Legends to focus on a whole bunch of different things and lose sight of the basics. But one of the advantages of doing the custom games like Haber mentioned is that it's not crazy. You join this game and you discipline yourself to, okay, for the next 5-10 minutes, I'm just going to focus on auto-attacking this minion right before it's about to die. And something as simple as that, just focusing really hard on trying to get good at farming, will condition yourself to look at really subtle things. One thing I didn't realize when I first started playing is that you don't always want to go for the minion with the lowest health. You want to go to the minion that's going to die next. So if you notice all of your minions about to attack a particular minion, even if it has more health than another low health minion, it might actually be the one that you need to auto attack next.
I get so frustrated by the minion gangbang.
Yeah, it's no fun sometimes. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to talk about using spells when you auto attack.
Yeah, talk about.
And
you got it.
Yeah, sure.
I get the listener question. I was gonna work that in
here. You were?
Yeah, because it fits right into what we're doing. Oh, okay.
I just ruined it. We can move. We can move on to a different topic then. I just think it's a very important topic that people
to be continued in the listener segment.
It's not a separate segment, you guys. Jesus Christ! I picked out this question so it would work in.
Okay, well,
don't throw a fucking hissy fit.
Do you want to talk about it now?
I want to talk about Smite before we get into the listener question.
Okay.
So Smite, this has gone like way off the rail now, but whatever. So junglers, a lot of people say that they like jungle because it's easier on your mechanical like disadvantage. Smite is one of those skills where if you get really good with Smite, you can do some crazy shit with it. And first and foremost, you need to understand that Smite can be used through any sort of CC. Any sort of CC. So for you junglers that are working on last hitting and you feel like you feel like this may not apply to you, you're dead fucking wrong, because learning how to CS will teach you how to Smite. And I mentioned this before in a previous episode when I had said that people that practice their mechanics or play a lot of ADC translate well over with their smites. It's true. When you can learn how to time abilities, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but smite also, when you can learn how to time your summoner to the point where you will get it with like 2 damage, like, okay, my smite is for 470, and the second it passes that threshold, like not even second, the millisecond it passes that threshold, and you're bam, it's gone. Like learning how to time that in jungle will help you translate over to your other lanes. So practice with smite, being like, okay, I'm gonna make sure to last hit this minion as like most effectively as possible with my smite. So say my smite's getting close to the 500s, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait until it gets at exactly 498 or my damage. Okay, I'm seeing how much I'm doing off. Okay, auto attack smite. Like just practice with it, learn how to, because you have smite so often now that it is actually something that you can practice in a game. You can get more familiar with smiting on time. It's not something that just comes with you over time of playing like it used to. Smite's now something that you can really put effort into getting good with. And when you get good with smite, you will translate over to your other roles, because you're just going to generally learn how to last hit things by gauging damage and gauging how long it takes to kill something.
For new players, it's also important to know about the smite thing that Asderition's talking about. People aren't just gods at seeing when it's low on health and then they smite. Sometimes it's like that. But if you actually click on, let's say, Dragon, for instance, and then you hover over your smite, it'll tell you the exact amount of damage that smite's going to do.
You don't even need to hover over smite anymore. It's in your...
No, it comes up on the tooltip now.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the dragon's health. And then you can see, okay, this is exactly how much damage I'm going to do. That's when I want to go in for my smite. And what Asderition is talking about is getting a better sense of your abilities so that way you can line it up with that number.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on here because there's another topic about last hitting that we haven't brushed on that's very, very important. And I'm going to work it into a listener question here. So we have a listener question from Gary saying he's been trying mid a lot this weekend and was wondering how much mana are you using early game. He was playing Ari, and he tries to use a minimum amount of damage unless going into a fight. And he feels like he's not getting as much CS because he's not very good at last hitting. Would you recommend using more mana in skills for last hitting?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would. I think, especially in the early game, mages particularly struggle with this. When I go into the mid lane, you have to understand that as a mid lane, mage, you're not going to get kills early. It's going to be a little tricky for you to pull out a kill unless they're just dumb and they just kind of give it to you. But like in the first few levels, you're not going to. What are you going to do to them? You're not going to auto attack them down to death. You're not going to use your spells when they're on like an 8-second cooldown. No. So the thing I tell myself whenever I'm hesitant about using a spell is I have this awesome stat called mana regen. And I got some, points and masteries in them, and I got some, a couple of I've got, a Doran's Ring that gives me mana regen. And if I don't use a single spell within the first 5 minutes, that stat is completely wasted. Like, why? Even if you're just throwing out 1 Q to get some damage down, and then you regen some mana, that's good. Like, okay, say it's going to be tricky for you to get that one like caster minion in the back because you see that TF has got a gold card waiting. Throw out your Q and back up. You'll pick that minion up, do a little bit of damage. He'll throw his Q and you'll get the You'll get the CS and maybe even put a little extra damage on some other minions and help you CS. Like, I am a firm believer in using spells to help you CS in the early game because, like we said before, CSing is the most important part. I would definitely trade perfect farm over a kill any day. Any day. So if you're using mana to get CS, that's fine. I mean, we will advise you to practice and learn how to last hit.
I gotta reel it back a little because Asderition is not wrong, but there's definitely another part of this argument that you definitely have to understand, and it's really spell management. And the reason why I said it's really good to go into a custom game and practice with your auto attacks, especially with AP champions, is while it is okay to use spells to get CS, you don't want to have to rely on your spells to get CS.
Absolutely.
That's a huge issue because you.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, it depends on who you're playing, though.
I mean, if you could if you get a last hit with an auto attack versus a spell.
No, you want to be able to last hit with your auto attacks on the vast majority of champions in this game, and then save your spells to be able to harass your lane opponent, or to be able to trade back, or really just to have mana. Now, I'm not saying you should sit on full mana and not get that caster minion that you wouldn't have gotten anyway. In that case, I'm right there with Asderition. Use your spell, make sure you keep your CS numbers up. But if you really practice with your auto attacks, you'll have more mana to harass your opponent. And if your opponent isn't good at managing their mana, you can abuse this to get an advantage in lane.
Also, you want to be careful, too, if you're using your abilities a lot. I mean, one is, if you find yourself having problems with mana, don't be afraid to get a mana pot or go in with a crystalline flask.
That's
because
true.
they're great items and they're things that will help you a lot, especially mana pots. People really overlook the usefulness of a mana pot because it can help you so much. It can be that difference between having enough mana to get that one last spell off to get that kill or whatever and not. So, don't overlook the usefulness of a mana pot or a crystalline flask, because crystalline flask is really nice for being safe in lane, having that extra sustain, being able to stay in longer and have enough mana to keep sitting there trading. But be very wary about shoving your lane, though, because a lot of spells, when you're using them, you will naturally shove your lane. And
he's talking about Ari. I mean, your Q. Yeah. If you're using that and it goes through all the minions when you're trying to harass, it's going to put you in a really tough position, especially before you're level 6 and you don't have necessarily the easiest way out if you get ganked.
I see you shoving the lane, and as a jungler, I'm like, cool, free meal. Come on, let's do it.
That's just ringing the dinner bell.
I want to say something. Okay, all right. Go ahead. He's talking about mid lane, and the reason I say use spells in the mid lane is because there is a certain. I play. And I know Frost plays very similar to me in this aspect, but I play aggressively. And there's no reason why you can't use spells to also harass and last hit. I do it all the time with Lux. All the time with Lux. It's like my primary source of damage is me throwing my E to last hit while also catching the enemy. Now, depending on the champion that you're playing, they're not wrong. Like, I'm not going to disagree with anything that you guys said. You should know how to auto attack to last hit something. You definitely should. Now, I don't think that last hitting is the primary source of I don't think that auto attacking is the primary source of last hitting in the mid lane.
Yeah, I completely disagree. I agree. Well, especially as the
I'm willing to make a point.
And that's fine.
And I'm even willing to go back on the Lux point, because I've also played a lot of Lux, and there's plenty of times where I do exactly what you said. I see the minions are low, my enemy laner's trying to go for a CS, bam, I get harassed, I get CS. But if I see a bunch of minions low that I could just auto attack, I'm not going to throw out a spell to get that farm if I can just CS it with my autos. I want to have my E up to harass the enemy laner, or in Ari's case, I want to have my Q up.
I think it's also really dependent on what's happening in the lane.
Yeah,
like if you're both in your opponent are just trying to, keep the lanes pretty neutral, then fine. Maybe you're just.
I don't do that at all. I like to push the lane.
That's you though, and that depends. Like what if you're really far behind? what if you're waiting for that gank and you can't be shoving your lane because you're waiting to turn mid lane around? There's a whole lot of scenarios where just shoving the minion wave's not going to play out to your advantage.
I agree, but I just don't want to, like, the damn freaking truth of it is that it's fucking hard to last hit as a mage. It really fucking
right.
It
is.
is.
And the
But that's
easiest
why
way to
you
do
need to
that
go
is through
in and
spells.
you need to learn how to last hit
Well,
with your auto
no, I
attack.
agree.
Eventually, I get to that point. Like,
I
if I'm
agree.
playing Ziggs and I've finished a bunch of items, I'm probably farming mostly with bombs.
I'm
But
like-
early
Yeah.
on, I'm only bombing them when I think I'm gonna hit them.
Oh man, I use spells to last hit early because it makes I'm confident in my abilities to CS. I really am. What I'm not confident in is my awareness to make sure that I'm always safe. And auto attacking as a mage can put you in a really shitty situation sometimes. Like sometimes it's just easier for me to throw out an E and leave it there and back up a bit and wait for me to proc it to make sure I'm getting that last hit. You're
That's
gonna
a specific luck
no,
scenario.
and
but think of it this way:
that goes with everybody.
if you use your spell to get last hits, you're also putting yourself in a huge dangerous situation because that means that if somebody jumps on you, you're on cooldown for one of your main damage.
Your E.
What do you mean, no way?
No way. I'm talking. Okay, all the champions that I'm talking about that could like sit
Let's
like last hit from
try
a distance.
Ari, because Ari was the one.
Yeah.
Okay, Ari is
Ari's the one of the
perfect.
questions.
Ari's
Okay.
perfect. You throw out your Q and you walk away. Like you know that okay, so you're maxing your Q level 3. It's probably like rank 2. So because I would go
still
Q
right.
EQ, but regardless, like you throw
like its arm or
Or-
whatever. Fox
grabbing
Fire.
charm second.
Okay.
My point
Anyways.
is that you can still you can use your Q to farm and safely because 1, it gives you movement speed, and 2, it does true damage on its back end, and 3, it helps you reposition and do damage to other creeps. Like I see what you mean. You don't want to push the wave. If you don't want to push the wave, then don't
Yeah, I
use
think
your
we're
spells.
arguing about two different things.
But
If I'm playing Ari against a
Almost
Talon,
always.
for instance, if I'm playing an Ari against a Talon, and I can get a farm by getting a long range Q or getting an E, I could do that and I'll get the CS. But that means that if Talon jumps on me, I won't have my spells up to counterattack if he jumps on me. So the spell management is really important.
Yeah, but I'll
I
also
think
go
that's
back and say I
a
agree with
position.
Asderition. If it creep score is very important up to the point where you should be using your skills, like auto attacks first, and if you know you can't get it that way, use your skills. Please use your skills. It's so much better than just letting it die.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's too easy for mages to miss out on farm to just be like, I'm just gonna make sure I mean, Froz, you may say that you stick to using your auto attacks, and I generally use my auto attacks fairly often as well. But I've often found that I will even miscalculate by like the quarter split millisecond, and I miss it by that quarter split millisecond. And I'm like, I could have got that had I just thrown out a fucking E.
Yeah.
I
Like-
do use spells to farm, but I use spells to farm the ones that I don't think I could get with an auto attack.
I
Mhm.
make sure I get as much CS as I possibly can. And if using a spell and making myself lose out on a lot of mana and maybe putting myself in a semi detrimental situation, if that's the case, then that's the case. Like I sacrifice everything I can to make sure I get that early CS because it is that important, especially to me, knowing that if I go back, my ideal back is probably around 1,500 gold in the mid lane, 1,400. Lets me, depending on what I'm wanting to get, lets me get some boots, a ward, chalice, whatever. That's perfect for me. I want to get at least 600 gold so I can get my beginnings to my Morello Monocon, or at least work towards my chalice. Like, depending on what, I'm always buying mana regen first because that helps me with my CSing, which I think I highly advise other people to do.
And everything you're saying about mages is true, but what I'm trying to say is it's not okay to throw out spells to get farm if it means that. So, okay, what I'm trying to say is if you take damage as a result of trying to use spells to get farm, it means that it's less CS in the long run. So you have to be really careful with your cooldowns.
If you take enough damage to get forced out, yes, because we don't want to pigeonhole champions like Katarina who typically like take damage when they CS. Like if you're gonna take damage, sometimes you're just gonna take damage. If you take enough damage to make yourself get forced out, then yes, you're doing
Remember that
something
when
wrong,
you
have a
use your
problem.
spells to CS, example on Ari, if you throw out your Q or your E to get a CS that you wouldn't normally get, sometimes that's fine, and I'm totally there with you because getting the CS numbers is huge. That's what this whole episode's about. But you need to be aware that after you use that spell, you don't have the same lane presence that you had just a moment ago. And
Yeah, that's
the
fair
way
enough.
my play style in mid lane and in pretty much most lanes is I don't want to be on cooldown for too long and miss the opportunity to capitalize on my opponent's mistakes because I'm a pretty aggressive player in general.
And I think like you could take what both of you are saying, kind of mash it together to really get like what the optimal thing is to do. Because yes, you want to be aware of what your lane opponent is, because you're not just there trying to get farm. You're there with another person who's also trying to kill you and get farm. But yeah, using mana and using your skills to get last hits, which you would not otherwise get, or to shove the wave, or to get the lane in your advantage. You use those. You use those as much as possible. But you have to be aware that when you're using them, you're using up a resource that on most mages is not something to come. It's easy to come by on before your first back.
Like, I'm not telling people to just go full, like, blow your mana on cooldown, keep throwing your shit out. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that there's no bad time to CS with mana. To CS with mana. I really am a firm believer in saying that. Unless you're like about to blow a major cooldown, which again, I will sometimes do. If I'm like, I'm gonna blow my ult. It's a 50-second cooldown.
Definitely.
Whatever.
Referring to Lux.
Referring to Lux. I
Well,
mean,
referring to
a lot of people. I mean,
I wouldn't farm with Ahri
like
Ultimate.
Ezreal, every time. Hey, I'm gonna go back. Boom.
Yeah.
True shot
So
barrage.
depending on who you're playing, and depending on what you're about to do, using spells should never be looked down upon. If you have to use spells to CS, spells to CS, then there's a little bit of a problem you need to work on. You need to work on your auto attacking. But that being said, I personally also rely on spells to help me get CS, and there really is nothing wrong with that. Like,
I think
I
everyone's
thought for a long
going
time,
to, because how many times do you get into minion wave and there's 2 minions that are going to die? Like you probably at the same time auto attack one, get spell on the other.
The CS. I definitely agree with that.
So,
but you shouldn't have to use it as a crutch.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
You shouldn't have to use it as a crutch for your lack of skill with auto attacks.
Well,
not as a crutch in general, because it's very important to learn how to use your spells to get last hits.
I just don't want people to feel like they're bad at the game because they struggle with CSing with a champion that's really hard to CS. Like, I don't run any AD runes on Lux, and her base attack damage is 48. That's a tricky thing to do. Like, it's even hard for me, who's been playing this game for a long time, who is very familiar with last hitting, very familiar with auto attack animations, just very familiar with everything, and I still struggle at it. And even pros struggle at it. Like, this is not something that everybody can do perfectly. That a set amount of practice will make you
but it's not.
it.
Also, it's not an excuse.
I use it as a crutch. I'm sorry, Froz. I use spells as a crutch for when I feel like I can't last hit. I really do. And I think it's the perfect crutch. And I think that's why mages need to rely on them.
Yeah.
As long as you aren't overly shoving the lane, putting yourself in a super dangerous position in doing so, or mana capping yourself, I think it's fine to use spells to last hit.
That's another thing.
But those are really the 3 things. Like, as long as you're following those 3 rules, you're fine.
I'm not going to use an E for 1 minion. Like, I will use an E if I'm going to get a couple minions and, like, maybe break down the wave because I like to push it. But, like,
you just identified something about Lux that drives me nuts. That moment when there's that, like, 1 full health minion and you're, like, playing Lux and it's like, I have to use all this abilities to kill 1 minion.
I'm not going to do that. Like, no.
It takes, like, 10 auto attacks to kill it. Like, if you're, like, in the mid game and all that, it just drives me nuts.
What I'm saying is use abilities in tangent with your auto attacks, and if you really feel like you can't get a last hit, even if you don't feel threatened about the enemy, or if it's maybe a tad too far, or you're afraid that, like, your auto attack just won't reach it in time, use a spell. Like, there's really nothing wrong with it unless you're about to make yourself go
Yeah, I don't want to say that you're bad because you're using spells to last hit. It's very important in any lane. You know, mid lane, bottom lane, top lane,
I'm more
jungle.
concerned that you know that if you use a spell to get the minions,
Yeah.
that there's a certain
Yes.
level of a disadvantage that you're putting
Absolutely.
yourself
Yes.
at because of your cooldowns.
It's
And
a pros and
if you play around that, it's really not that bad, and getting the CS is the most important thing.
So to take from this, primary objective number 1, make sure you know how to CS with your champion, and primarily through auto attacking. So if you can CS through auto attacking with your champion, then you have a basic concept of being able to CS with that champion.
Yeah.
CS using spells when you can get CS primarily using spells, especially when I can get more than one creep, because then it makes it also mana cost effective. If I'm hitting every single creep, getting 2 creeps, also landing my passive on an enemy champion with an E, I consider that very, very, very cost effective. So make sure you're being cost effective with your spells, not wasting on 1 or 2 minions, but capitalizing on what you're doing with it. Make sure you're not blowing so much mana to the point where you're making yourself like uncomfortable, because if they engage on you, you can use 1 spell. Don't do that. Make sure you have pots. Doom brought this up, and it's something that I put in the goals doc, and I didn't even mention. I love blue pots now. Like, what was I thinking these last 4.5 years?
Love them. I play
Fucking
AD carry. I
blue
love
pots.
them so much.
They're amazing. Buy blue pots if you find yourself using spells more often, and it's gotten to the point where you're bringing yourself down to where you can't fully combo.
Especially if you can't afford a mana regen item early, it's like a lifesaver to get those things.
Yeah.
Even 1, maybe 2. That's it. That's
Or even like I'll even get them on like tankier junglers that
Tend
that
to go in the jungle.
have to spam spells to clear because their auto attacks are wet noodles. So sometimes having that or having the Biscuiteer Mastery to where your health pots give you health and mana,
that's a good one.
is nice. And also, throwing that 9 points in the utility tree so that you have that Biscuiteer Mastery, even on a mid laner.
It's
that
really
can help
common.
A ton.
Actually,
it's really common.
2109 is actually standard. So
it's what I run on most of my AP mids.
Yeah, most mid laners nowadays don't run 9 in defensive. I had one last point.
Okay.
For mid lane specifically, other lanes can do this, but it's the easiest in the mid lane. It's actually something that I had said on the show, but it is actually relevant to this as well. If you're behind in CS and you are very afraid to even go close to the wave, or go past that little median where you're starting to be jungle bait, say the creep is now pushing to your wave or to your turret, bringing the wave opposite of the turret. So say you're top side, right, and the turret's here. Bringing the wave over here just by tanking it and moving it over here can really help you last hit as well, because then it stops it from being under the turret. And what I had mentioned earlier, this applies to mages. When you get to that point, if your AD scaling is really shit, this happens on Lux all the time. Around level 9, 1 auto attack isn't going to cut it under turret. You got to drop 2. So this helps you bringing the wave away from the turret, not letting the turret hit it. Allows you to CS, because
if you're able to freeze it just outside the turret where it can't, where the turret is not shooting it, that's
perfect.
That's just like smile, because like you've done something great. That's exactly where you want it.
And I'm gonna say
in most situations,
for champions like Lux or other people that have like something that can reduce damage, is the easiest thing to do in the world. Throw out a W, sit next to the turret, wait for your creeps to come, and just kind of like okay, they're here, back up, and then boom, you're set.
Okay. So I think that pretty well wraps up last hitting here. If you still got more questions about it, don't be afraid to message us in game through email, Twitter.
Practice.
I'm gonna even go.
Is that how many times we put it? Yeah.
I'm gonna go so far as to say, if you have trouble practicing in a specific lane, tweet at one of us. If you want to find out how to CS in the mid lane more effectively, tweet FrozztByte. You want to learn how to CS as an ADC, go to Haber, and as a top lane or Doom, or as jungle. Also, if
I
you're
do
trying
top
to,
and jungle.
If you're figuring out how to smite as well, talk to Doom, because each aspect of CSing is different. A ADC CS differently than a mid laner. Like this, it's just the natural course of things. So if you have a little bit more of a in-depth question on something more specific, tweet us, not just at 4 words.
Okay.
And thanks for the question, Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, remember, we are also on iTunes. So, if you want, give us a review there. We have 3 reviews so far from Shurimpu, Wise Papa Smurf, and that one guy who AFK Trolls.
That guy's a dick.
Love
I hate that
God, I
guy.
hate that
But
guy.
he gave us 5 stars.
He
so
gave
Yeah,
us 5
thank
stars.
you for that, but still,
All right,
you're,
so we love
But
him.
still, you're an asshole.
yeah, why would you do that?
But we love you.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Yeah,
give us
thank
a
you
review
guys so
on
much
that.
for the 5-star reviews and
Mhm.
keep the reviews coming. We really appreciate them. Thank you.
Yep.
We're
So
still
don't
new,
forget-
so.
Don't forget that RP contest ends April 1st, so send in your goals to our email, forwards@trinityforcepodcast.com, or Twitter at forwardspodcast with the number 4. And you'll get a chance to you'll be entered for a chance to win one of 2 $10 RP cards.
Mhm.
So once again, everyone, thanks for joining us here. This has been the Forwards Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
See you
Thanks,
next
guys.
week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Forwards Podcast, part of the Trinity Force Network. If you'd like to leave feedback or questions for the crew, you can reach us at forwards@trinityforcepodcast.com. If you'd like an easy way to download the podcast, you can visit us at forwards.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at forwardspodcast with the number 4. If you want to listen to all the other great T-Force Network podcasts, you can find them at www.trinityforcepodcast.com. Thanks for listening to the Forwards Podcast. We'll be back next time with more ways to help you move forward in League.